There are many myths and misconceptions about the armed forces pension schemes. Let's bust some. Hey everyone, and welcome to The Savvy Squaddie. In this video, I'm going to set the record straight on a number of myths, misconceptions, and questions related to the UK Armed Forces pensions that you have recently asked me. Just as a caveat, unless I state otherwise, when I talk about the pensions, I am referring to the AFPS 15, the current scheme that all serving personnel are on. Right, let's get straight into it with the most common myth, which a lot of you sent in, and that is in relation to the half pension. I'm sure many of us has often heard, "I'm staying in until my 12-year point for my half pension," or words to that effect. As with many misconceptions, they stem from half-truths. In this case, the 12-year point is significant when thinking about leaving the armed forces, but not because there is a half pension waiting for you. There is no such thing as the half pension. It does not exist. Serving for 12 years out of a possible 24 does not mean your pension will be half the amount. The pension is not calculated that way. But what people often confuse this with is what is called the resettlement grant. This is a tax-free lump sum payable to serving personnel who leave the UK Armed Forces after 12 years of service, providing they are not entitled to any other immediate benefits like the early departure payment or the immediate pension. This grant is not subtracted from the pension you have accrued throughout your service. It can be used for anything, and it's there to help you with your transition to civilian street. At the time of recording, the amount is over £14,000, and it increases each year in line with our pay award should we receive one. The amount is the same regardless of if you serve 12 or 16 years, or if you're a corporal or a staff sergeant when you leave. The amount is detached from the pension. I have a whole video on the resettlement grant which I will link below. Really what these people should be saying is, "I'm staying in until my 12-year point to claim the resettlement grant." Next up is another common one I and many others have heard over the years, and that is, if you do a full career as a private, you get an RSM pension. Now, that is not true at all. The pensions are just not calculated that way. And also, why on earth would a private soldier who has not progressed through the ranks over their whole career be rewarded with the same pension as someone who has worked their way up the ladder? There would be little incentive to promote if Private Blogs gets the same pension as an RSM, but without taking on all the risk and responsibilities that come with higher ranks. This one doesn't stand up to a basic level of scrutiny. Next up is, you don't get anything unless you've done at least 12 years. This is false. If you serve for less than 12 years but more than 2, you will be entitled to a deferred pension. But again, potentially a half-truth that's evolved over the years. It is correct to say that if you serve less than 12 years, then you will not receive any immediate benefits, as you'll miss out on the resettlement grant. You'll then have to wait until your deferred pension becomes payable before claiming it, which will be in your late 60s. So if you're approaching your 12-year point, it's worth considering the resettlement grant before signing off. This one says that 24 months is required to qualify for a pension. Now that is actually correct. Pension benefits begin to accrue from your first day of paid service, but to then receive that pension later in life, a minimum of 2 years, which is 24 months, of service is required. Private pensions are just as competitive. Overall, I would say no. For the vast majority, that's just not the case. Check out my video where I showed the value of the Armed Forces pension and highlight how much a similar civilian pension pot would need to be to afford the same level of income I would after a full 24-year career. The next one a few of you sent in is, "Swapping us to a new scheme without our prior consent is illegal." It's not. The government are well within their power to change our pension scheme. The opening line of Section 1 of the Armed Forces Pension Compensation Act 2004 states that the Secretary of State can establish schemes by order, and as the Armed Forces pension is a public sector scheme governed by parliamentary process rather than private contracts, they are free to change the pension without our permission. Now, they can't just do it. There will have to be a review, it will need to be debated, and so on. Like the Hutton Review in 2010, which recommended shifting to a career average revalued earnings pension and aligning retirement ages with the state pension age, leading to a 2011 white paper, a stakeholder consultations and agreements through 2012, then full parliamentary scrutiny of the Public Service Pensions Bill, before royal assent in 2013 and rollout in 2015. It's not like tomorrow they can just say, "Here's your new scheme, enjoy." There is still a process they will have to follow. The pension soldiers get now is virtually nothing. Well, that's not true. Just use the Armed Forces pension calculator to see how much you could receive. I have a whole video on that which I will link below. As a guide, after a 24-year career reaching W01, my pension is around £23,000 per year. That's not including the state pension. Most civvies won't even reach that after working their whole life, and I will after working for 24 years. Next up, taking some of the bigger retention bonuses affects your final pension. That's not true. Whether you took the commitment bonus before that was scrapped, or the resettlement grant, or the recent 8k one for private soldiers, none of those affect your pension. The AFPS 15 gets no immediate payout. This one depends on when you leave the forces. Get out before your 12-year point, then yeah, nothing for you until state pension age. Leave after your 12-year point, but before the EDP point, then you'll get the resettlement grant, which is a tax-free lump sum. Sort of an immediate payout, but not the kind available if you serve longer. The early departure payment, or EDP, is the immediate payout available to most serving personnel. To receive it, you must serve for 20 years and be 40 or over when you leave. Both criteria must be met. If you meet this, then you will get an immediate tax-free lump sum, usually tens of thousands of pounds, and a regular monthly income which is taxable. It's not as much as the pension, but it's enough to provide some freedom and flexibility. I have a whole video on this benefit which I will link below. Really consider this if you're thinking of leaving. And then if you happen to serve until age 60, under the 15 scheme, then you will receive an immediate pension. Reality is though, most won't serve until then, which is why EDP is a thing. So, it depends on when you leave whether or not you'll get an immediate payout, but it is possible. Reserve time counts towards your regular pension. Yes, under the AFPS 15, your time in the reserve does count towards your pension. However, we just mentioned the EDP. This benefit is only available to regulars, so time in the reserves would not count towards that, or even the resettlement grant. Next is, whatever time you serve under 18 doesn't count towards your pension. This is a rule from the 75 scheme and no longer matters. For both the 05 and 15 scheme, time served before the age of 18 counts towards the pension and the 2 years of qualifying service required. The biggest myth is that it's worth staying in for. I think this depends. If you've done 4 years and you're not enjoying the job and you've got things lined up on Civvy Street, then I would tend to agree. To serve another 20 years or so probably isn't worth it. However, if you start getting to your 14, 15 and 16 year point, this is where it starts being worth staying in for. To leave approaching the EDP point is just throwing hundreds of thousands of pounds out the window. There is absolutely a pension trap, and many people I know are in it. You can't top up your army pension. You absolutely can. I will link my detailed video below which covers all things added pension. Certainly worth checking out if you're a higher rate taxpayer. The contributions, after all, are tax efficient. The new pension scheme is somehow better than the old one. This depends on what aspect you are looking at. There are areas where the 15 scheme is better. As I mentioned earlier, the 15 counts service before the age of 18, the 75 doesn't. With the 15 scheme, a deferred pension can be claimed early at age 55, the 75 scheme does not allow a deferred pension to be claimed early. With the 75 scheme, your pension may be reduced if you rejoin. This is known as abatement. This does not happen with the 15 scheme, including EDP. When it comes to your dependents' benefits, under the 75, you must be married or in a civil partnership for your spouse to receive your pension when you die. A long-term relationship doesn't cut it. However, under the 15 scheme, the definition of partner is modernised to include those that are not married. The 15 scheme is open to both regular and reservists, while the 75 was just regulars. So whilst the 75 scheme does tend to provide a higher annual pension for a similar career to someone on the 15 scheme, it also falls short in other areas which the 15 scheme fixes. As with most things in life, it's incredibly nuanced and context matters. Next up, you get the pension at the age of retirement with your state pension. So under the AFPS 15, the deferred pension is usually claimed at state pension age, which for most young people is currently 68 but likely to increase. However, as I just mentioned, the pension can be claimed early at 55, but in doing so it will be reduced as it's paid out over a longer period of time. I've made a whole video on that which I will link below. Also, you can absolutely claim your state pension alongside your armed forces pension. No one actually mentioned this myth, but I have heard people say that you become ineligible for the state pension if you have an armed forces pension. That is incorrect. You can claim both. To receive full state pension, you do need 35 qualifying years, so employment after leaving the forces will be necessary for most. And lastly, generals retire on a full salary for life. I've heard this a couple times, and through my reading over the years, I've never been able to find anywhere that says this. But if this is Gen and it's hidden away somewhere, please let me know. And there you have it, a bunch of myths and misconceptions corrected, or at least some additional context provided. I've tried to include most of the ones that were sent, whether that be directly answering them or indirectly through other responses. I have a bunch of pension related videos on the channel which can help you to further understand how great our Armed Forces pension scheme really is. Go check them out. You might be surprised what is coming your way. Have I left out any major myths? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all for watching. If you liked what you just saw, please hit the subscribe button up there. And if you want to see some more videos, click over there. See you soon.